From Jake Paul's knockout power to Mike Perry's relentless aggression, here's everything you need to know about Jake Paul versus Mike Perry's technical breakdown. The anticipation for Jake Paul versus Mike Perry is sky high, and for good reason. Both fighters bring a unique set of skills and styles that promise an exciting showdown. Jake Paul, the controversial YouTube star turned professional boxer, has quickly made a name for himself with his knockout power and ability to draw massive audiences. Paul's rise in boxing has been massive, defeating former UFC fighters and seasoned athletes, showcasing his surprisingly sharp boxing skills. Mike Perry, on the other hand, is a seasoned brawler known for his insane toughness and aggressive style. Perry, a former UFC fighter with a solid MMA background, is no stranger to high-stakes fights. His transition to boxing has been marked by his willingness to engage in brutal exchanges, relying on his iron chin and relentless pressure to break his opponents, which normally happens. Jake Paul's knockout power is his main scary weapon. His ability to end fights with a single punch makes him a constant threat. Paul's strategy often revolves around setting up his powerful right hand. He uses a solid jab to measure distance and disrupt his opponent's rhythm, creating openings for his devastating overhand right. In his fights against Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley, Paul demonstrated his ability to time his punches perfectly, catching his opponents when they least expected it. In this fight, one potential key moment could be Paul's attempt to land his right hand early. If he can establish his jab and find the range, he might look to unleash his right hand in the first few rounds. A clean connection could be big and wobble Perry, who has shown vulnerability to straight punches in the past. Something to keep in mind, though. Mike Perry thrives in chaos. His fighting style is characterized by relentless forward pressure and willingness to engage in toe-to-toe exchanges. With the mindset of, "I'm willing to die in here." Perry's success often comes from his ability to absorb punishment and keep moving forward, breaking his opponent's will through sheer aggression. His fights in the UFC were often wars, where he would wear down his opponents with constant pressure and heavy hooks. A crucial moment in the fight could be when Perry manages to close the distance and force Paul into close-quarters combat. Perry will likely aim to cut off the ring and trap Paul against the ropes, where he can unleash his barrage of hooks and uppercuts. If Perry can turn the fight into a brawl, it will test Paul's ability to handle sustained pressure and fight off his back foot, which we haven't really seen before. As the fight progresses into the middle rounds, conditioning will become a crucial factor. Paul has shown decent stamina in his previous fights, but Perry's relentless pace could push him to his limits. Perry's strategy will likely involve maintaining a high output, forcing Paul to expend energy defending and countering. With Jake being the biggest he's ever been to fight Mike Tyson, he now has to drop the weight and increase his cardio, as Perry will try to drown him in later rounds. If Perry can keep up his pressure, we might see Paul's fatigue become a factor. This could provide openings for Perry to land more significant shots and potentially sway the judges in his favor or end the fight with a knockout. The final rounds of the fight could be where the decisive moments occur. If Paul has managed to land his right hand and maintain his distance, he might look for a late knockout or finish. Perry, meanwhile, will be relentless, trying to close the show with a barrage of punches, hoping to overwhelm Paul. The outcome of the fight hinges on who can impose their will and execute their game plan more effectively. Will Jake Paul's knockout power prevail, or will Mike Perry's relentless aggression be too much to handle? These key moments will shape the outcome of this highly anticipated showdown. Jake Paul has shown a surprising defensive game for someone relatively new to boxing. He utilizes a high guard to protect against incoming shots and demonstrates good head movement to slip punches. In his fights, Paul often employs lateral movement to stay out of danger, circling away from his opponent's power hand and maintaining distance with his jab. Paul's counterpunching is one of his standout attributes. He capitalizes on his opponent's mistakes, using their aggression against them. For instance, in his fight against Tyron Woodley, Paul timed a perfect counter right hand as Woodley overcommitted to his punches. This ability to read his opponent and respond with precise counters makes Paul a dangerous adversary. In the upcoming fight, Paul's defensive strategy will likely involve keeping Perry at the end of his jab, avoiding prolonged exchanges, and looking for opportunities to counter when Perry overextends. If Paul can effectively neutralize Perry's pressure and counter with his right hand, he could find success in the later rounds. Mike Perry's defense, while not as refined as Paul's, relies heavily on his toughness and willingness to absorb punishment. Perry often keeps his hands low, inviting his opponents to throw punches, which he then tries to slip or block with quick head movement. This risky style can lead to him taking significant damage, but it also allows him to stay in range to deliver his powerful hooks and uppercuts. Perry's counterpunching is less about precision and more about power. He looks to exchange in the pocket, where he can trade shots and rely on his chin to withstand his opponent's punches. Perry's ability to land heavy counters while under pressure makes him a formidable foe in close-quarters combat. For Perry to succeed against Paul, he'll need to use his head movement to avoid the jab and get inside. Once there, he can unleash his counter hooks and uppercuts. Perry's goal will be to turn the fight into a brawl, where his durability and power can shine. From someone who does bare-knuckle fighting, which is the ultimate brawl sport, this should be a walk in the park for him. Jake Paul's rise in the boxing world has been marked by his impressive striking ability, particularly his power. His right hand has become his calling card, capable of ending fights with a single punch. Paul's knockout victories over former MMA champions like Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley showcased his ability to generate significant power, even against experienced fighters. Paul's jab is another crucial element of his striking arsenal. It serves multiple purposes: maintaining distance, disrupting his opponent's rhythm, and setting up his powerful right hand. His ability to mix up his jab, going to the head and body, makes him unpredictable and hard to time. Despite his strengths, Paul's striking is not without its flaws. His relatively limited experience means he's still developing his ring IQ and learning to deal with different styles of opponents. Paul's defense, while effective, can sometimes be too static, relying heavily on a high guard without enough head movement. In his fight against Anderson Silva, Paul showed signs of fatigue in the later rounds, indicating that his conditioning might not be on par with more experienced fighters. This could be a significant vulnerability against someone like Perry, who thrives in high-pressure, high-volume exchanges. With big legs and a thick torso, he will fatigue quickly, and the lactic acid buildup will slow him down. Mike Perry's striking style is the epitome of aggression. His power lies in his hooks and uppercuts, which he throws with bad intentions. Perry's willingness to take a punch to land one makes him a dangerous opponent in any exchange. His ability to absorb damage and keep moving forward has been a hallmark of his fighting career. Perry's experience in MMA has given him a diverse striking background. He's comfortable throwing punches in bunches and mixing up his attacks to the head and body. His ability to generate power in close quarters, combined with his relentless pressure, makes him a formidable striker. Perry's biggest weakness is his defense. His aggressive style often leaves him open to counters, and he relies heavily on his chin to absorb punishment. This can be a double-edged sword, as it allows him to stay in fights, but also exposes him to significant damage. Another potential weakness is Perry's lack of technical refinement compared to more disciplined boxers. His wild, looping punches can be telegraphed, making them easier to avoid or counter. Against a sharp counterpuncher like Paul, this could lead to trouble. The outcome of this fight will hinge on who can better implement their game plan and capitalize on their opponent's weaknesses. Paul's calculated power versus Perry's raw aggression creates a fascinating dynamic that promises an explosive showdown.